Perkins pipes. There are a couple of things I want to do in this video with you. First of all, I want to point out that I don't have a smoking shed or a dedicated smoking room in the house. Where I live, it's a little bit cold to be out on the deck here in January. So what do? I smoke in the garage. And I imagine that that's probably like a lot of you. And I want to draw attention to that just briefly, because one of the things we'll be talking about on this channel, in fact, we already have, are some of the finer things. And I really can't emphasize enough that the finer things are not always connected with wealth, right, or status, or privilege. But the finer things are truly the finer things that can be enjoyed by everyone. So even in the winter months, as we talk about literature or music or rock and roll or whatever it is that we end up talking about, realize that these things can be enjoyed by anyone, anywhere. One doesn't need to be a snob or a pipe snob to enjoy the finer things. Now, speaking of pipes, first of all, I do ask that if you're interested, please subscribe to this channel. Would love to have you. Certainly had a growing number of people joining the channel, and also connecting with us over at Pipe Cottage Social, wonderful app, and join us in the group there, The Finer Things. Today I have my Peterson Professor from the Sherlock Holmes line. Absolutely love this guy, and seemed to be the perfect pipe in a way to enjoy while I talk with you a little bit about one of my favorite books of all time, Homer's Iliad. Now, there are many, many translations of Homer's Iliad. Homer, of course, wrote in Greek. The Iliad and the Odyssey are both Greek poems. And of all the translations that have been done into English, and there are many, 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 and we're going to talk about a few of those in this video. But my absolute favorite is the one done by Alexander Pope. Alexander Pope's the British poet who lived between 1688 and 1744. And he came up with his translation of the Iliad in 1715. Now, I wish I could tell you that this is a first edition. And there's two reasons that you know that that's not the case. First of all, I just mentioned that the finer things are not always connected with wealth. And a first edition, which I was fortunate enough to hold in my hands once at a beautiful bookstore in Pennsylvania, I would have needed an extra $6,000 in my pocket to walk out with that first edition. The other thing is the first edition is in several volumes, folios. So this is definitely not that, but it is a beautiful volume. And I should mention that a dear friend of mine who's no longer with us, a man named Billy Belt, gave me this, and it really holds a pride of place in my home library, the books that we have inside our home. And I just wanted to share with you a little bit of this. Now, the Iliad, you say, well, wait a minute. I may remember reading the Odyssey back in high school. And indeed, a lot of students do read the Odyssey in high school. It's pretty common fare, or as an undergraduate. But not the Iliad. Well, the Iliad, for my money, is fantastic. It is full of action. It's full of adventure. It's full of the great, really manly virtues. You see issues of leadership, good leadership and bad leadership, relationships between fathers and sons, and so much more. So the Iliad is very much worth your time to read. And for my money, I love Pope's translation the best. Now, there are those who consider Pope's translation the finest translation of any work into English. And then there are others who don't like it at all. There's one famous commentator of his own time who said, well, it's a very pretty poem, Mr. Pope, but one must not call it Homer. Well, belay that, I say. Especially when you get lines like this. And so there's the opening of the poem in Alexander Pope's translation. Achilles' wrath to Greece the direful spring of woes unnumbered, heavenly goddess sing. That wrath which hurled to Pluto's gloomy reign the souls of mighty chiefs untimely slain, whose limbs unburied on the naked shore devouring dogs and hungry vultures tore. Since great Achilles and Atreides strove, such was the sovereign doom, and such the will of Jove. Now, you just listen to those lines. Rhyming, iambic, pentameter, couplet. We call those heroic couplets. And it just has a power, it has a drive to it. Declare, O Muse, in what ill-fated hour sprung the fierce strife, from what offended power Latona's son a dire contagion spread, and heaped the camp with mountains of the dead. The king of men his reverend priest defied, and for the king's offense the people died. It just sweeps you along, it carries you along. In fact, one of the great commentators on Homer, Matthew Arnold, talked about the forward thrust of the poem and how it just carries you along. And indeed, Pope's translation does that. It just has a musicality to it. I want to share with you one other, is one of my favorite passages, and again, just really captures the power of this. And then we'll talk about some other translations and then a little bit more just about reading this in general. But book 5 is often referred to as the Aristeia of Diomedes. Diomedes is a Greek warrior in the Trojan War. And while Achilles is the greatest warrior on the Greek side, and maybe Ajax the biggest, I would say Diomedes is probably second to Achilles in terms of his ferocity. And in book 5, you get that depicted as Diomedes just tears into the Trojan lines single-handedly and really drives the entire Trojan army back. Thus toiled the chiefs in different parts engaged, in every quarter fierce Tydides raged. Tydides is what we call the patronymic, because Diomedes is the son of Tydeus. Thus toiled the chiefs in different parts engaged, in every quarter fierce Tydides raged. Amid the Greek, amid the Trojan train, wrapped through the ranks he thunders o'er the plain. Now here, now there, he darts from place to place, pours on the rear, or lightens in their face. Thus from high hills the torrents swift and strong deluge whole plains and sweep the trees along. Through ruined moles the rushing wave resounds. Through ruined moles the rushing wave resounds, o'erwhelms the bridge and bursts the lofty bounds. The yellow harvests of the ripened year in flatted vineyards one sad waste appear, while Jove descends in sluicy sheets of rain, and all the labors of mankind are vain. So raged Tydides, boundless in his ire, drove armies back and made all Troy retire. Now tell me that is not some stirring stuff. And it's like I say, it's such a wonderful story. There's so much in it, vivid depictions of battle, but also heroism and other great virtues. And truly, Pope's translation gets that forward thrust, gets the beautiful rhythm, and the rhyme carries that forward. Now, there are other translations, and you may not enjoy that. In fact, I would say for ease of read, you probably can't go better than a fairly modern translation is done in the 2000s by Stanley Lombardo. It's very modern. It's made to be performed, really. And if you read the preface to it, Lombardo talks about performing the Iliad, really as it would have been done back in the day. Homer was a bard, if there even was one Homer, and people will talk about that, and maybe that'll be a topic for another day. I'm a romantic. I like to think that there was one Homer. But at any rate, the poem was meant to be spoken aloud or sung. Lombardo's translation captures that so that it very much is a performable poem. So Stanley Lombardo is a very, very good one. Many more here recently. The first translation of the Iliad by a woman, Emily Wilson, has come out. But there's another that I would point out to you. It came out in about 1991, I believe, by Robert Fagles. And Fagles is one of the few people who has translated all three of the great Greco-Roman epics, the Iliad, the Odyssey, both from Greek, and then the Aeneid by Virgil, from the Latin into English. And one of the things I like about Fagles' translation is he gets the beginning. The opening line in ancient Greek, and so anybody who is out there says, well, hey, his pronunciation of this is going to sound rather off. This isn't how Greek is pronounced. This is what we understand best as our reconstructed pronunciation of ancient Greek. But that opening line is "Meninat edethea peleiadio akileos." So the first word is actually rage, and Fagles' translation gets that. It opens up with the word rage. Rage, goddess, sing the rage of Peleus' son Achilles, murderous doom that cost the Achaeans countless losses, hurling down to the house of death so many sturdy warriors' souls, making their bodies carrion, feasts for the dogs and birds. No, yeah, that's another one that is it's forceful, it's powerful. So I would encourage you, if you haven't read the Iliad, check it out. Find a good translation. Leave a comment in the comments section of this video. We'd love to hear from you, either about your favorite translation, or perhaps if you read one of the ones that I've mentioned here, what you've come to like about it, and share some thoughts. Would love to interact with you that way. So enjoy your piping, enjoy your reading. I'm going to continue enjoying my pipe here. And as always, we leave you with the words of Malcolm Guite. I do these little things in order at last to do nothing, or as I would put it in Latin, Parva ago, with tandem nihil agam. We invite you to subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and have a wonderful day.
There was a man who walked the earth, diesel and dust, feeding the dead. He showed us love, he showed us light.